Good evening to one and all. The School of Ancient Wisdom is happy to welcome all of you to yet another learning session this evening. We thank you for your participation and welcome all of you in the ongoing webinar series. As always, I would like to begin with our school prayer. O hidden light, vibrant in every atom, O hidden light, shining in every creature, O hidden love, embracing all in oneness, may each who feels himself as one with thee, may he is also one with every other. Thank you. Today we have with us Mr. Yogeshvar. So we shall now hand over this forum to him for next 1 hour and request him to share his knowledge and insights with us. Thank you.
Thank you. We will begin with our tradition, what we call as Mangalachanam. Om Shri Guru Pyo Namaha Harihi Om Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Puntu Sahaviryam Karavavakai Tejasvinavadhitamastu Ma Vidvishavahai Om Shanti 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 Om Tat Sat. All right. In the last classes, we are discussing the ways in which we can actualize in our everyday experience the 6 inner assets, Samadhi, Shakka Sampatti, they call in Vedanta, the 6-fold inner assets. Now, developing these qualities in the context of Vedanta is there, it's very much there, we know that. But when it comes to our active everyday life, how do we bridge the gap between the reality of our everyday lives and the expectation of this cultivating this inner asset? There are certain traditional standards and expectations, and we have a way of life that is not compatible with that. So this is usually the problem when people go into the spiritual quest, and when they learn from Vedanta classes, when they attend yoga, they meditate, they take up a specific sadhana, upasana, etc. And when they set a spiritual goal for them, either they are going towards moksha or they are going towards some other higher goals. The main issue we face these days, especially with respect to people in the corporate life and in big metropolitan cities, where the flow of the everyday rush, the flow of the everyday rush and chasing so many things and going by the clock, and the different demands that come upon us from all kinds of quarters. This seems to define, this flow of life seems to define what we are even allowed to dream. So theoretically, though, we know that we all are free to dream what we want, but the grip of this routine, this rut, is so much, it even dictates what we are allowed to dream. It even dictates our level of comfort even in our dreams, right? The dreaming in the sense our aims, what we can aim, what we can go towards. It even dictates our thinking. And over a period of time, we also pick up a lot of false values that are not based on any spiritual principle, just some false values that we pick up from here and there, from media, and all kinds of influences in our subconscious mind. It starts making our intellect work in a certain way that even though we may have Shraddha, I'm sure most of us have Shraddha. Here we have Shraddha in the Shastra, in the words of our Gurus, and in certain basic things we have Shraddha. In spite of that, it becomes almost impossible to appreciate a spiritual value when it is given. Why I am mentioning that is this aspect, especially cultivation, unconscious cultivation of false values. False values in the sense, the values that are not based on tradition or common sense or science. It is just based on, it is not based on any valid means of knowledge. It is just a value that is nurtured in the society through media and through our exposure and through peer pressure and through societal expectations and through loose thinking in the sense when we don't think systematically about something. Especially, let us say there is a person who does not have a systematic, deep, and sincere, authentic way of thinking and analyzing and understanding something, a value. And that person is a very powerful social influencer, either from the mass media or from social media. That person has a huge influence, and their whatever they say is covered in all the newspapers, if it is olden times, or they have some million views or whatever, and they have a lot of followers, and people tend to take what they say very seriously. Even if they don't take it seriously, what they say seems to make an impact in the deep part of the mind. If a very famous actor, like some superstar or some supreme star or some star, that person wears a rudraksha, everybody starts wearing rudraksha. If a very famous actor says he is an atheist, everybody starts feeling more acceptable. Everybody starts, all his fans start feeling atheism more acceptable. This kind of influence. So because of all these influences, the intellect is clouded by personal fancy. So that's what creates the false value. We have a value for a person, we have a value for a context, a family situation, or a celebrity, or a social situation. We have a fancy for it. Then there is a universal value. Now, this universal value is superimposed with the fancy that we have, and we don't try to understand that universal value as it is, but we understand it through an intellect that is conditioned by our fancy. So what happens is we tend to understand it in the way in which that whatever fancy we have, whatever fandom we have, whatever liking we have, in a way that our liking or our fancy allows, only within that spectrum we are able to accept and we are able to appreciate that value, and we are not able to see beyond that. We are not able to appreciate what that universal value has to contribute for us. A very typical thing that we can see is in this, especially in this consumerist spirituality, what I call as consumerist spirituality is when, especially, you can go and take it, you can choose what you want to listen, and if you listen to it, if it is pleasing for you, you feel good. Basically, feel good spirituality. Consumer spirituality would be basically a feel good spirituality. So something feel goods, immediately you feel nice, you listen to that. If it challenges my deep-seated beliefs, or if it challenges my perception, I would not say beliefs, if it challenges my perception about something, about myself, or if it challenges a pet theory of mine, then I don't want to listen to that anymore, because I cannot handle the cognitive dissonance it produces in my mind. Cognitive dissonance means a conflict that it generates. I am not able to handle. So I choose to get into my comfort zone, and I abandon the inquiry into that spiritual truth or value or principle. This is something, this consumer spirituality. Here, for example, one of the very popular things, this yoga. In yoga, we say yoga for stress management. Nothing wrong. I'm just telling you how it goes. Yoga for better flexibility. Make up to this no problem. Yoga for performance. how to use yoga nidra and yoga techniques so that you can sleep less and work more. Nowadays, it is not so bad. When I was in my youth, in my 20s, let's say some 15 years back, 20 years back, it was not seen as a problem. Oh, you can do yoga nidra, and one school was marketing, one very famous yoga school. If you do this, this conscious relaxation, deep relaxation, yoga nidra or whatever, if you do that for 25 minutes, you will get the benefit of 6 hours or 7 hours of sleep. There was even one yoga course where I went. They said if you take 20 deep breaths with with the sankalpa that I am going to get the benefit of 6 to 8 hours of deep sleep. You have to do that, keep that sankalpa and take 20 deep breaths, and after that you are fresh. So there are people who tend to keep using that and refreshing from time to time. And instead of having a healthy 6 to 8 hours sleep, they try to work more and then to for more performance. So performance and generating wealth became more important than a natural sleep cycle. But nowadays it is not there. They understand it doesn't work, and there is more value being generated for realistic, authentic, proper way of life. So a proper lifestyle, a proper sleep cannot be replaced by a yoga technique is something that the clarity has finally seems to have dawned on many people. So it's not popular like how it was before, but it was like that. And then we have Bhagavad Gita for corporate management, Bhagavad Gita for conflict management, Bhagavad Gita for this, Bhagavad Gita for that, Bhagavad Gita for making money. Probably I have not seen that, but I'm sure somebody is doing that, right? Bhagavad Gita, secrets from Bhagavad Gita to multiply your profits. I'm sure somebody has written an article on that, right? So this is a very typical example of consumer spirituality, where we tend to twist the basic fundamental values and the concepts we study in order to fit our fancy framework. So this is one of the main problems. Now here, today we are going to discuss in the sixfold inner wealth. So when we are cultivating the sixfold inner wealth, it is absolutely all right to adapt and redefine those inner wealth. How we define titiksha, how we can define samadhana, shraddha, according to our limitation. See, when we redefine it according to our limitation. When compared with the original definition that is given by the benchmark, which is the tradition, which is the sampradaya, which is the shastra or Vedanta. So if we take a principle from the Vedanta Shastra, we are not able to live up to what is the benchmark there. No, what is the standard given by the Shastra is the benchmark. We can be aware of that. When we are adapting a spiritual principle, when we are adapting a value and redefining it for our purpose, so that we can work towards that, the attitude is such that I am redefining it because of my limitation, not because each one has their own path. Each one has their own way of arriving at it. But when we take a universal spiritual principle, its reality is given. We are arriving at it, right? So similarly, one of the six inner assets that is recommended is called uparati. Why I gave all these concepts is because this is a very tricky point. This uparama or uparati is ideally it means sannyas. Ideally, even when we say when we read, there is a beautiful text called Sadhana Panchakam, that Vedo Nityam Adiyatam, Shankaracharya ji, Adi Shankaracharya keeps saying. So when he says that, the last line, study Veda every day, then do the karmas enshrined in that, the Nitya karmas enshrined in that. When you do that, do it with an attitude of dedicating it to the Lord. Then give up all the rituals that are meant for getting personally relevant results, kamya karma, give all that. Then clear all your sins with the help of this kind of life, with pious life. and constantly contemplate on the different defects of our everyday achievements and time-bound achievements and the different pleasures of the world. Contemplate on the limitations. Then desire to know the true nature of yourself. Atmecha vyavasiyata. May you strive to develop the taste and the passion for knowing the true nature of the self, for self-knowledge. May you develop the passion for self-realization, for self-knowledge, to know your own self. Then, once having developed that, once you see that this alone makes sense and nothing else makes sense, Nijagriha Turanam Vinirgamyata, it's there. May you leave your home and run away very quickly and in quest of truth. That's what it says. Now, immediately the alarm will go up for everybody. So what happens is, instead of saying this, most gurus say it just means that then they step down. It doesn't mean you have to run away. You can find that the same it all depends on internal renunciation, and then the discourse goes, and finally they'll say everything is okay, and then there will be no so the emphasis goes on mental renunciation, and not the physical renunciation is not important, and then slowly it will get diluted step by step, and then it will end up in some corporate Vedanta. Okay. Now, it's there. Similarly, Uparama is something, it basically means renunciation. There is no compromise on that. The actual benchmark given in the context of Vedanta, again, that is important. When you read Viveka Chudamani, when we read Tattva Bodha, the context where it is given, Uparama, in the Shastra and the Sampradaya, it means sannyasa. Means there is no more unnecessary commitments, and all external props are removed. You are under the sky and you are only with yourself. There are no commitments. You are completely available for the purpose of self-inquiry. You are completely available for the quest of liberation, to the exclusion of every other commitment. That's what it means, which means basically sannyasa. Right. Now, having said that, so that is the benchmark. Having said that, then we see our own limitation. So when we see, okay, so what we need to do is, when we are striving to bridge the gap between our reality and what is the benchmark of abidance in spiritual value, from what we understand as the spiritual value and where we are, when we want to bridge the gap, when we want to improve our abidance in the spiritual knowledge, we cannot compromise the benchmark. When the Shastra and the tradition, it gives us a benchmark, we can't compromise it. It's like a policy. See, policy cannot be compromised. Policy can be impractical or impossible to, live with. It is like, it's like unreachable fruit up in the tree. Now it's mango season. All around there are mango trees, and then there will be the best mango fruit will be on top of the tree, which you cannot reach. So like that, these spiritual goals, we are looking somewhere up there and we cannot reach. But that doesn't mean like that, when we say that that little fox, it wanted to have the grapes, it jumped and tried to catch the grapes. And then what did it say? Oh, these grapes are going to be sour. I don't want these grapes. These are sour, useless grapes. And then it runs away. It starts blaming the grape simply because it cannot reach them. So let us not be like the fox. And the most important thing in abidance and spiritual knowledge is, we don't create a wrong version of the knowledge to fit our ego. It is better to see the limitation of ourselves, our ego, our own mind, our own sense faculties, and our abilities. It is better to recognize our limitation and see how I can redefine it for my practicality, so that eventually I will reach. Eventually, I will be able to actualize the benchmark. I will be able to live the benchmark actual definition of what the Shastra says. So that is the ideal. I will be able to reach the ideal, arrive at the ideal eventually. But however, my current reality allows only this much. It does two things. One, you don't lose sight of the goal. Two, it develops humility. When it develops humility, we see our own limitations, we have a chance to work with our own limitations. But when we compromise the definition of the goal itself, when we compromise at the policy level, then we are directionless and we are left without. It's like it's like a boat in the sea without a lighthouse telling where the shore is. So that is not okay. So that is the danger that we have to take care, especially in our times, because because of the compulsion and it's not it is natural, it happens, it's okay. Because of the compulsion and the rush of the modern life and all the pressures at so many levels, there doesn't the value for humility and the value for these value for these spiritual ideals, they seem to be eroding and they seem to be losing meaning. So that happens. One of the main problems is these spiritual ideals seem to lose meaning. So similarly, one of the most difficult things to understand, this uparati is uparama or uparati in one of the six inner assets. The main issue with this asset, with this inner asset uparati, the benchmark is sannyasa. So let us say that we can't handle that. Now, how can we adapt? Now we go into the spirit of the rule. So this is where when we are adapting a spiritual ideal, we go and try to understand what is the spirit behind this spiritual ideal. What is the spirit behind this goal, behind this value? What is it trying? Why do we have to develop this asset? What does this inner asset do to us? How does it help in our spiritual pursuit? How does it help in our pursuit of knowledge, or how does it help in our pursuit of dharma? When we try to understand that, then we can see how we can redefine it for us, and we can work with our functional definition. Time to time we can keep refining it. So we create a functional definition of every spiritual principle, and now we are going to explore how we can create a functional definition of this uparama or this uparati for the purpose of each one of us. Right? There are two aspects in this uparati or uparama. One, not being physically in the matter of lifestyle, being free from unnecessary entanglements or commitments. Unnecessary commitments. There are necessary commitments dictated by one's own swadharma and one's own situation in life, and there are unnecessary commitments. So one definition of uparati is swadharma anushtanam. Shri Shankaracharya's definition is usually swadharma anushtanam. In Tattvabodha, swadharma anushtanam eva uparama, it says. So swadharma anushtanam means, let us forget the benchmark definition of swadharma, which is basically based on your jati, varna, and your kula and all that, which is not relevant for most of us. We are not, because we are already gone very far from that. So when we say swadharma here, it means whatever in your conscience you feel as your duty. Swadharma, whatever I feel as my duty is what I am supposed to do. What is my role in society? What is my role in my family? What is my role in what is my current role for myself? What is my commitment to myself in my growth trajectory that I have set for myself? In the as a pradharma for me, for example, suppose if I am a seeker of moksha, I am a mumukshu. So what is my dharma as a mumukshu? If I am a practitioner of yoga, my swadharma, what is my dharma as a yogi? A yogi, for example, is committed to non-violence. My swadharma is committed to non-violence. So when there is a context where I am having a tendency to respond with violence, if it is not necessary for protecting dharma, or if my role does not require it. So let us say if I am a yogi and I am a frontline warrior, and I am in some in that India-China border, and there is a skirmish. I cannot say I am committed to ahimsa. No. So there it is different. So if my role does not demand And if I am not in the job of protecting the dharma, and if I am not in a situation where violence can be avoided, I mean cannot be avoided, if it just I am being violent only simply because of my habit, or just to please myself, or simply because I cannot contain my anger or whatever, and and because I want to push my agenda on the situation, I am being violent, then this I see that my commitment to myself, my swadharma would tell me to learn to handle my violent tendency and behave in a non-violent way in thought, in word, and in action. This is for myself. My role in the family. If I am in a certain situation to take up a responsibility, let me not shy away from taking that responsibility, discharging that responsibility. Similarly, I have a role in society. Then let me not shirk my responsibility as a citizen, as a whatever is the professional I am in my office or anywhere else. Right. So now this would be Swadharma. If I don't do this, I will feel guilty, or I will feel like there has been a lapse. I will feel a sense of omission. I did not do what I am supposed to do. That feeling will arise. If that feeling arises, then according to my conscience, that is my Swadharma. I'm supposed to do that generally. And then as we become mature and mature, this the conscience also changes, and our understanding of our Swadharma keeps organically moving forward. But being true to the moment, being completely true to that given moment to my Swadharma. So Uparama is about silencing and quieting the mind, and cessation, stopping of unnecessary things. That's what Uparama means. But then you are saying, what is this? You say it is stopping of, cessation of all the unnecessary things. It is about stopping and silencing. But the teaching is Swadharma Anushthanam. Teaching is encouraging you to do Swadharma. It's contradictory. It is not inaction, it is action. It becomes like the confusion with Arjuna says, he says, you talk always about renunciation, Krishna, but then you are telling me to go to war. How does it, these two, I am not able to put these two together. So similarly, when we say Swadharma Anushtanameva, when we say Swadharma Anushtanam, means me doing my Swadharma. Has two ends to it. One, me doing only my Swadharma, and me learning to keep my mind out of what is not my business. What is not my Swadharma, I don't have to do. This is where we have a problem in our current social system, where everybody has a tendency to poke their nose on everything. Sometimes they poke their nose on everything other than their job, and they don't do that, focus on their job. There is no energy left to do one's own job. So what it says is that you focus on your job and don't worry about other things, even if those things, it's like in Bhagavad Gita, it says, death, even death or failure in doing one's own dharma is better than success in doing somebody else's dharma, in doing something that is not your dharma. These are very, very subtle points. So this is connected, deeply connected with Uparama. So when we cannot keep quiet, I am somebody of a very active mind and I have an active life. So a very clear role clarity and acting only within the confines of my role and not bothering with things that are not my business. This is a very important quality that we need to develop. This is one dimension to it. We will discuss this now. There is another dimension to Uparama. There is another definition. It's a beautiful idea that is given in Vivekachudamani. He says, Alambanam, taking psychological support of external objects, situations, and people. Taking psychological support, holding on to external situations, objects, and people for the sake of psychological support. You are basically taking psychological support. Without that, I am nothing. Like a lovers, they say, without you, I will die. Oh, without the job, who am I? Oh, without my family, I cannot survive. Like this, you have all kinds of the whole thing, I can't imagine a life without. There are even people who say, oh my God, when you really like some snack point in your neighborhood is really like, oh my God, what am I going to do without this? Right. So telling in a light-hearted way is different, but that becoming really a very deep psychological hanging, a psychological prop which starts giving, there are two in different levels. We have psychological props for comfort. We have psychological props for sense of belongingness and stability and security. We have psychological prop. Now, this is the most important and the dangerous one. We have external psychological prop that give meaning to our life, that gives meaning to our own existence. Psychological props that makes us feel a meaning in being alive. Now, this is something that is really a issue that we need to address. This is one of the, because the sense of meaning is at the core of our psyche that decides how much of inner harmony, the state of mind that we can, a state of minimal conflict and a state of mental health that we can maintain on a sustained basis is dependent on how much of sense of meaningfulness that we feel in ourselves or in whatever we are doing and how we are living. So when the sense of meaning goes, it becomes very, very difficult to keep everything else together. So this is what all the psychological research, they have found out that the sense of meaning is very important. So in Uparama or Uparati, the other dimension to it is not having an external thing as a source of meaning for my existence, as a source for comfort, as a source of psychological comfort, and as a source for a sense of security and stability. This is the benchmark. This is the benchmark. Right? So why this is being said is because anything that can be objectified from the understanding of Vedanta, we know anything that can be objectified is impermanent, and it is not absolutely real. It is a functional reality. It's a transactional reality that is true only within a certain spectrum. It is mithya. Let's not go into that concept, but mainly it is anitya. It is impermanent, and this dependency on the object can become the cause of suffering, can become the cause of dukkha, suffering, or pain, mental agony, because of that object being impermanent. If I am not challenging my dependency on an external object, person, or a situation, I can be 100% sure that is going to be the perfect job that we have. I know a friend of mine who is, is having the perfect job, family, everything is okay. It's all going smooth, it's beautiful. But the guy is restless. He wants something more. There is no depth and meaning in life. He wants something more. But this gives a certain comfort zone. He cannot challenge this comfort zone to go and pursue that. There are some people who challenge this comfort zone. I'm not asking each one of us have to challenge. The decision depends on individuals. For example, when we hear about the story of Lord Buddha, we say that his quest for the truth was so much. His questions were the desire to find the answer to those fundamental questions was so much that he left the palace, the comfort of that life, and he went in search of the truth. We study about it. Now, if we want to pursue these two dimensions, let us remember one, doing only our own dharma and not bothering about what is not our business. Another, not taking psychological support from external things. Practical support is different. Practical support, we need a family, we need a roof above the head, or we need a transportation, or we need a job. These are all practical situations. That is okay. But here we are mainly talking about taking psychological support from our practical supports. That is the dimension we need to work, and this is something that we each one of us have to work with ourselves authentically, with the complete sincerity and self-honesty to ourselves, and we have to work with our psychological dependency and maybe challenge it within a certain practical limits. We can challenge our dependency and see, or imagine mentally we can do a thought experiment. How I would be without this. Let us take, you take the most important human relationship that you have, and then just sit and think. Now, let us see. Tomorrow morning when I wake up, this person is not going to be there. How do I feel? And then you analyze it, see from where it comes and how important it is. So now this is possible. This uparati, this not challenging our psychological dependency on an external object, situation, or a person, and freeing ourselves from the dependency is possible only when we have a higher goal. Now, unless we have a higher goal, that is because all my meaning and all my support and all my all my sense for living comes from this external support. Especially when I attribute my meaningfulness for my life comes from a certain context, life context. Then, and I know nothing about this. I know nothing about this terrestrial realm that I am living in, and these relationships and these things that are around me, and the sensations that I get, the experiences that I get, the routine that defines me, the roles that define me. I know nothing outside this. This is all I know. What I experience with my five senses, and this is all I know, and I have absolutely no clue about any reality that is beyond that. Then this uparama is not going to work. This uparati can work only as a mental exercise for developing some emotional resilience. It can become like a psychological exercise. It's like, you develop your emotional resilient muscle so that you can be a more independent person, and then you will see that you are losing out on so many nice things of life. There is the constant conflict. So that is what we are talking about. We are talking about this uparati only, it becomes relevant only when a person has a spiritual goal, a spiritual ideal that is above the mundane everyday existence. That is not a spiritual ideal that is beyond our immediate manifest terrestrial life. If I am completely invested in this life, and I have no clue about any reality that is beyond this, any goal that is outside of this, then uparati makes no sense. But for a person with a spiritual goal, that is exactly where it becomes relevant. Even if your goal may not be moksha, if you don't understand moksha, you may have other spiritual goals that are more tangible, that are more time bound, that are more objectifiable, like me experiencing God, or me going to some higher loka, or me raising my kundalini and getting some super conscious experiencing samadhi, all kinds of things, whatever, or me following my religion perfectly, and me doing all my rituals and doing my dharma perfectly. You can define it. Can be a time bound spiritual goal, or the timeless eternal goal, which is moksha, complete liberation from birth and death. It could be either. But uparati makes a lot of sense as an inner asset only when I have a spiritual goal that is outside this material terrestrial existence that we are thrown into. So other than that, it does not make any value. Then it will create conflict. So when we are going to actualize this uparati, this inner asset, when we are trying to develop this inner asset, we have to redefine our uparati based on our spiritual commitment. Whatever is the spiritual commitment, the spiritual goal that I have, that is not within this terrestrial everyday realm that we are living in, our everyday struggles and situations. All this, all this gets over at the time. By the time we die, it's all over. And they have nothing outside of this. Then, so we have to define uparati based on what goal I have outside of this. So I have to understand my spiritual goal and see how uparati can help. For example, in the context of, I will say in the context of moksha. If a person is desirous of moksha or self-realization, Uparati or even a yoga samadhi, the Uparati can be for an active person. These two things. One, I dedicate myself to my Swadharma and I try to perform my Swadharma to the best of my ability. I try to discharge my duties to the best of my ability, simply because it contributes to my mental purification, my inner purification. Because I am not mature enough for renunciation. And because I feel strongly that these are all my duties and this is my role and I am supposed to do this. So because of this ethical commitment that I have, the sense of ethical commitment that I have, it becomes my Swadharma. So I do this with absolutely no desire for the result. So now, this is where Karma Yoga comes. So Karma Yoga becomes a excellent adjunct for an excellent tool for developing this inner asset called Uparana. So when I am not defined by my results as a success or a failure, I am here to do this duty because I have to do it. This is my job and I have to do it. And I have to do it very well because doing something very well is part of the discipline. So that when I will not do it well, only when I am lazy or negligent, which is a quality of tamas. Tamas does not help me in my self-realization. Tamas does not help me in moksha because we study in Katha Upanishad that it is like walking on the razor's edge. They say the path of self-realization is like walking on the razor's edge. We need so much of attention. We need so much of commitment and dedication. So let me develop these qualities by performing my Swadharma and not defining when my results don't define me as a successful person or a failure. And when I understand that results come as a prasada from Ishvara and all the Karma Yoga concepts. So when we understand that, I am not psychologically dependent on the result in order to have a commitment for my Swadharma. So this keeps working on my developing the quality of Uparati inside, the quietening of the mind. Because most of the result-oriented thinking is what drives me crazy most of the time. I drive myself crazy and I get anxious, and then there is a lot of dissonance, and then I compromise on what the procedure, or somehow by hook or crook I try to get the result. All this problem comes only when I am obsessed with the result. When I leave the result, now I am not driven by anxiety of the result. I am available completely for the correct process, the way something is supposed to be done. And cognitively, what happens? I am not the slave of my animal brain. I am not the slave of my limbic system. I am more and more using my prefrontal cortex. I am more and more using my conscious mind. And the rush of my natural mind, my programmed mind, is not dictating my thoughts anymore. I am not driven by my instincts anymore. That is the inner experience of Uparama. The inner experience of Uparati, how much I have developed my Uparati, shows as how much choice I have towards my inner compulsions, how much I am able to stick to my actual conscious commitment, and how less I am able to be carried away by external things. The lesser I am carried away by external things, the more I am committed to my conscious pursuit. This is an inner experience of one's Uparama. So when we are developing these inner assets, we can have a journal and write down how much today we can have Uparama chart, on a scale of 1 to 10. We can map certain situations. In this situation, how was my Uparama? How was my Uparati on a scale of 1 to 10? These quantification helps a lot. We can say, okay, today I got carried away in this situation. We have a pattern. All of us have a pattern. Certain situations are known to make us get carried away. So each one of us have what we call as, each one of us have our own weaknesses. So this weakness is nothing but situation where subconscious trigger carries away my conscious mind. My conscious personality is carried away because of a subconscious trigger. So this is like you're sitting and talking, there is a phone in the hand, and I suddenly discover I am looking at some Instagram or something. So it's a typical example. I'm checking my phone, and then after 3 minutes, I discover that I'm checking my phone. Oh, I'm not supposed. When did I start checking my phone? No, this has happened for a lot of people, and I noticed that even when we are, when we continuously spend a lot of time on social media, that Indriya force takes over, and the presence of an object, the presence of an external object, the moment see there object in the vicinity, it takes away my Indriya, it takes away my mind, it hijacks my consciousness in that way, and it goes off. Then I have to bring it back. That is where the inner aspect of Dhamma comes. Shama, Dhamma, Uparama, they go together. The inner aspects, four inner aspects are Shama, Dhamma, Uparama, Titiksha, Samadhana, Shraddha. We are going that from the bottom. We have started with Shraddha, we came to Samadhana, we came to Titiksha. Now we are discussing Uparama. Now, one of the inner experience of Uparama is that Dhamma becomes easier. The sense withdrawal, not the senses not getting carried away becomes a marker for how much Uparama I have. And also, in this Swadharma Anushtana, in Uparama, when I am developing the inner asset of Uparati or Uparama, and when I am focused on the aspect, I am dedicated to my duty. The other side of that is I am not doing anything. I am not putting myself in situations that does not concern me. That is not my duty. I will not put. Especially when we have to work for higher ideals, this is extremely important because nowadays there is a clamor for our participation. Each one of us is asked to participate in all kinds of things. We don't have to do that. We are not here to save the world. This is one of the main things that we need to understand, especially as spiritual aspirants. I see that most of the spiritual aspirants nowadays, we are all generally more sattvic people. They're all very nice people. So they feel there is more empathy. They feel for a lot of things. You feel for a lot of things. It's absolutely okay. The Karuna is very good. Wishing for the welfare of the world is very good. We can always dedicate 5 minutes of our prayer time to pray for the welfare of everybody. But it is also very important for us to understand the world cannot be fixed. We need to really understand we cannot be fixed. We can say then if everybody goes like this, who will take care of all the social issues? So the question comes, all the people whose Swadharma is taking care of social issues. If I am a local politician or if I am a law enforcement officer, so each one performs their own Swadharma, all the issues are automatically taken care of. So let me perform my Swadharma. How do I make that guy perform his Swadharma is not my problem unless I am that person's guru or I am that person's superior. That person is either reporting to me or that person is my disciple. I have no job in trying to make that other person perform his or her Swadharma. So let me not poke my nose in fixing the world is one of the first things that we need to get nailed in our head as an important thought process that we need to develop, an understanding that we need to develop in order to practice Uparama. Going there to fix the world is a false value that we have developed over a period of time because of not understanding the nature of the world. The world, first, when we study Vedanta, we understand the nature of the world, what it is. And we also understand our limitations. So we do what we can do. I'm not telling that we should be completely focused only on our job. We cannot reach out. There is no charity. What about yajna? You may ask. In Pancha Yajna, we have Pancha Yajna. Then there is the yajna of contributing to the society. That's all right. But then we define. We say this much I have. We have to prioritize. We cannot poke our nose on everything. And it is very different. Volunteering for doing a charitable activity is very different from thinking that I want to fix the world. I want to fix every situation. Then what happens? What they call as loka vasana. This loka vasana increases, and we are suddenly find ourselves constantly thinking about situations that are not okay and reacting to them. If we don't have enough, if you don't have enough empowerment to really go out there and influence the situation, we start trying to influence the situation in our social media account, or sitting and daydreaming in our own head, getting restless about it, losing our peace over it. Some actor, somebody committed suicide, then I am wondering about that for days together and not able to concentrate on my work, what I have to do. So this is what happened. So we cannot fix the world. When I really understand that, I understand my limitation and I see, let me do what I have to do to the best of my ability and let me fix myself. Right? So that becomes the fundamental basis, that like a thought framework, the idea framework as a basis, understanding knowledge framework for developing the problem. So it's something like a clarity that we arrive. When we really arrive at this clarity that what is my role and what is not my role, and learning to become indifferent, that is where the when in developing Uparama, especially when adharmic things that are around us that keeps agitating us, which is asking for our participation, these things when we encounter, one excellent quality advised by Patanjali is upeksha. Upeksha is like indifference. It's like a sublime, high-minded indifference. We understand things happen, certain things are inevitable, they are part of life, the life goes on, and it's not my job. And it is inevitable, it goes on according to the law of life. I don't have to bother about it. We develop that kind of indifference that comes from a deep clarity on my limitation and the nature of the world and my role clarity. From this, we develop a certain kind of indifference towards incorrigible alarming situations that we encounter both in media and in the society around us. And the things that call for our thing, we feel in a situation, I can do this job better than that person. But it's not my job. It is that person's job. So that's where we remember Krishna says, Swadarmo Nadanam Shreya Varadarmo Bhayavaha. This is my job. Let me dedicate to my job. Let that person do that job. Even if that person does the job in a manner that is worse than how I could have done it, doesn't matter. The job is not important. The result is not important. That person learning to do the job well is more important than the job actually getting done well. So this is from the spiritual perspective. So I'm sure that this is going to create a lot of conflict. This is like an unending debate. If you participate and express your concerns, we can debate it, we can discuss it, we can try to arrive at the clarity. So these are very subtle things, but this is what Uparama is. Uparati is an inner asset that is extremely useful for us as spiritual aspirants, and it has two dimensions. One is doing my job, not poking my nose into situations that is not my job. And two, not developing psychological dependency. First, when I see that I am becoming psychologically dependent on something, take yourself out of that situation. First is situational, because Uparati is more about lifestyle. Because we have Vairagya. Vairagya is another quality that is there, an answer that we can develop. But that is more about clarity. But here, Uparati is more about behavior. It's about lifestyle. I take myself out of situations that are unnecessary. I take myself out of situations where I don't have a duty to perform. I don't allow myself to be in situations that breed psychological dependency in my head. Now I become psychologically dependent on some level. To see myself that I'm becoming dependent on this person or situation or thing. I'm starting to define myself. Then I cut myself, take a break, and then I work with my attitude towards that situation. I see the limitations of that situation. I see the consequences of being psychologically dependent on that. I process that. I process my relationship with that person, that object, that situation that makes me psychologically dependent. and I develop a more mature attitude that does not encourage dependency, a more objective attitude, a more realistic attitude. I'm not saying that be dependent only on the infinite self, but that is only possible for a realist person. The realist person doesn't need. So, as a aspirant, what I can do is I can try to get as realistic as possible about this situation where I am developing dependency before the dependency takes over my judgment. Before the dependency takes over my judgment, I extricate myself out of the situation. It is absolutely uncompromisable in developing the inner aspect of Uparati. It is very important for us to physically take ourselves out of situations that don't concern our duty and out of situations that breed external psychological dependency. We have to cut ourselves physically from those objects, from those from those situations and from people. For example, nowadays there is a very famous thing. It's called dopamine detoxification. I read about it. Very interesting. So they keep on doing some things like posting on Instagram, like constantly taking selfies, or going through scrolling through their feed, or social media feed, or constantly eating some sweets, all kinds of things where they feel the rush that a kind of a satisfaction. They feel a kind of a organic instinctive satisfaction from doing something. That gives them that high or a kind of a gratification. So they see that they're constantly in that gratification cycle. They cut themselves out of that situation. 3 days, 4 days, 1 week. Completely. They cut their connection with their object. They are not with that object anymore. That they are either switching from smartphone to some button phone, or they cut themselves from no sweets for 1 week, something like that. They physically cut that situation so that the brain is not dependent on that situation for dopamine, that reward, that kind of satisfaction and that addiction. So we create a situation for de-addiction. Then we work with our inner circuits using different techniques of yoga, different psychological and therapy techniques, or through conversations, through introspection, through writing the journals or whatnot. We use all the tools that are available for us, and then we reorient our mind towards those situations. And then we come back into the similar situation. We relive that situation according to our newly found insight and according to our new mental state, and take care not to fall back upon the old habit, not encourage the old habit, old habitual way of being in the situation. We don't encourage that. And then we make sure that we don't get back into the dependency cycle. So this is basically Uparati or Uparama. This is an inner asset which gives us a tremendous kind of a natural focus. It gives us an ability to naturally be dedicated on the right track, to keep ourselves on the right track in our jobs. It helps us to keep ourselves in the right track in our spiritual quest. It helps us to keep ourselves on the right track ethically and with minimal inner conflict. It's not biting our teeth and fighting with all our inner demons and staying on track. That inner fight becomes less. It's not such a struggle anymore to do the right thing. To do the right thing becomes much, much more easier when we develop the inner aspect of Uparati or Uparama. So we have redefined it for our active life, but ideally the Uparama or Uparati, actually in the context of Vedanta, it means physical renunciation of all entanglements and commitments so that I can totally work with myself and with my study of the Shastra and with my contemplation. That is the benchmark. Let us not lose sight of the benchmark while we redefine the inner assets for each one of us individually. So 1 hour is over. Maybe one or two questions, if anybody has, you can ask. Otherwise, I will finish the session. I will hold on for a few more seconds. You may unmute your phone or you can write in the chat box. Right? Okay. So let me finish the class and let us meet next week. I will finish with my Shanti Mantra. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vishyate Om Shanti 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 Asato Ma Satgamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Tangamaya Om Shanti 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 Om Tatsate. Thank you.
Thank you so much. This was a wonderful session today. Thank you. We shall meet tomorrow at 7 o'clock. Thank you.